We expose ancient letters from beneath the soil, but making them legible is going to take a little more work. With the dirt swept away, all it takes is some water and elbow grease for the past to shine through.
Wow, look at that! Wow. My brain is exploding right now.
For nearly 2,000 years, people believed every word Jesus spoke was already known, carefully written down, and protected by the church. Sermons were studied, verses memorized, and history felt complete. But a recent archaeological discovery is forcing scholars to pause and admit something unsettling. We were wrong. Buried beneath layers of dirt and silence, archaeologists uncovered an ancient inscription that had been hidden for more than 1,500 years.
A mosaic floor with inscriptions from a 1,500-year-old structure.
It was not found in a library. It was not copied by monks. And most shocking of all, it was never recorded by the church. These words were sealed away, untouched by doctrine, untouched by debate, waiting in the ground while empires rose and collapsed above them. This discovery does not simply add a footnote to history. It shakes the way faith has been understood for generations. If these words truly came from Jesus, why were they left out? Who decided they did not belong? And what else may have been quietly ignored or lost along the way? Historians believe the story was finished. Archaeology just reopened it. What was found challenges long-held beliefs and raises questions that cannot be easily dismissed. Stay with us, because what these missing words reveal may change how you see the past and what you thought you already knew. The ground that never forgot. The discovery did not begin with headlines, flashing cameras, or official speeches. It began quietly, with dirt under fingernails and long, tiring days under the sun. Archaeologists arrived at the site with notebooks, measuring tools, and patience, not with expectations of rewriting history. They were not chasing miracles or legends. Their task was simple and routine: map the ruins, record stone positions, and document remains that most people would walk past without giving a second look. At first, nothing about the place seemed extraordinary. It looked like many other ancient sites scattered across the region. Ancient locations often hide their most important stories beneath later buildings. One structure is razed, damaged by time or disaster, then covered by another. Over centuries, history does not disappear. It layers itself. Walls collapse, floors crack, and new builders reuse what came before. Stone rests on stone. Memory sinks into the earth. In this case, a church from the Byzantine era sat quietly above older foundations, its presence known, studied, and cataloged for years. Scholars believed they understood it, or at least they thought they understood enough. As the team dug deeper, the story began to change. Beneath the church floor were signs that did not belong to the Byzantine world.
The most important one to appear on a map, the only map we have from the Byzantine period.
The soil held different textures, different materials, and different patterns. These were not leftovers from a grand empire. They were traces of everyday life. Layers beneath the church pointed to homes from the 1st century, the same period when Jesus lived and taught. This alone caught attention. The timing mattered. The evidence was humble but powerful. Fishing weights used for nets, broken hooks, simple cooking vessels, and floors worn smooth by countless footsteps told a clear story. These were not symbolic structures built to impress pilgrims. These were houses where families lived, worked, and slept. The marks on the stone showed repeated use, not ceremonial display. It was life as it was lived, not as it was later remembered. What made this location special was not beauty or wealth. There were no signs of luxury, no gold, no grand decorations. Instead, there was continuity. Generation after generation had returned to this exact spot. Even after destruction, even after abandonment, builders came back. They rebuilt directly on top of what had existed before. This kind of repetition is rare. It suggests intention. People believed this place mattered.
Behind each of these original artifacts lies a powerful story reaching across generations.
It's kind of crazy, and how they just finally discovered it, which is pretty significant, I think.
Archaeology does not rely on emotion, but patterns are hard to ignore. If a site is rebuilt again and again in the same position, something is anchoring it. Not convenience, not a chance, memory. The people who rebuilt here remembered something important, even if the reason slowly faded into tradition. They protected the location without fully explaining why. The ground itself seemed determined to hold on to its story. While written records disappeared and spoken memory weakened, the soil remained. Earth does not forget easily. It presses down, seals, and preserves. Rain, mud, and collapse did not erase the past here. They guarded it. What many assumed would destroy evidence actually saved it. For years, the site spoke only through silence. Stone alignment, tool placement, floorware. No clear message, just hints. Archaeology often works this way, forcing patience. But eventually, persistence is rewarded. When words finally appeared, carved, placed, and preserved, they did not feel random. They felt like the last piece of a long conversation between the past and the present. This ground will never forget. It waited, a message that did not fit. The real surprise emerged from the floor itself, in a place that at first glance seemed ordinary. Mosaics were common in early churches, carefully laid out with colorful tiles to depict symbols, scenes from the scriptures, or to honor wealthy donors. Visitors would often admire their patterns without realizing they were stepping on centuries of history. This particular mosaic appeared simple at first: geometric patterns, faint colors, nothing that immediately suggested a secret. But as the conservators and archaeologists began cleaning the surface carefully, removing layers of dust, dirt, and centuries of grime, a different story started to emerge. Something about the floor felt off, or perhaps unfamiliar. At the center of the mosaic, a Greek inscription came into view. It mentioned Jesus and one of his closest followers. That, on its own, would not have been shocking. Many churches carried inscriptions, prayers, or biblical phrases. What drew the team's attention was not the names, but the way the message was constructed.
First of all, that it's a text. Direct text and letters from people back then are relatively rare. And the people mentioned in the text.
The phrasing did not match any known gospel. Scholars had memorized the texts, consulted manuscripts, and compared wordings, yet this was something different. It echoed familiar teachings, but the words were arranged in a way no one had recorded before. Subtle changes in tense, word choice, and sentence structure suggested that this was not a copy or a variation, but a personal instruction. Experts realized that the inscription did more than describe a story. It gave guidance, direct advice, almost as if it were a private message meant to be understood by someone who knew the context intimately. It was not narrative. It was not general moral teaching. It was pointed, practical, and specific, unlike the polished, edited texts that had survived in written form elsewhere. This discovery fits into the broader understanding of early Christianity, which existed long before a finalized Bible. Communities relied on oral traditions, conversations, and local memory. Stories were repeated, instructions passed down verbally, and interpretations varied from town to town. What was spoken often did not survive in written form. This inscription seems to belong to that earliest period, a snapshot of teachings before formal councils, before selections of sacred texts, before centralized authority decided which words would be recorded permanently. Importantly, this does not mean the church intentionally hid something. There was no deliberate cover-up, no conspiracy to erase words. Instead, it reflects the complexity of history itself. Records get lost, voices fade, and choices about preservation are often accidental. What survived in this mosaic had been shielded by layers of building and earth, preserved not by intention, but by circumstance. For scholars, this challenges assumptions about what we know. Texts that seem final or canonical today were once part of a much broader and messier world. Words of Jesus, like this one, could be personal instructions to individuals, forgotten in wider circulation, yet significant enough to leave an enduring trace when the right place, right conditions, and right people preserved them. The mosaic revealed that history does not always follow tidy lines. It is fragmented, layered, and full of surprises. A floor that seemed ordinary at first contained a message that did not fit the expected pattern. It quietly reminded those who uncovered it that the past is often more alive, personal, and unpredictable than any book or manuscript might suggest. This message, silent for centuries, finally spoke, and it did so in a way that could not be ignored. Why do some words survive? Many people imagine that the Bible was assembled quickly, carefully, and without debate, a neat process guided by certainty. The truth is far more human and complicated. Early Christian communities did not have a single, universal text. Instead, they used many writings, some widely copied, others preserved only in small communities. Letters, teachings, prayers, and stories circulated orally and in fragments. Over decades, even centuries, leaders debated which texts were reliable, which were inspired, and which were dangerous, misleading, or too confusing to pass on. These debates were not secret. They were intense, personal, and sometimes contentious, influenced by local culture, language, and understanding. Some of Jesus' teachings were repeated everywhere. Stories like feeding the 5,000 or walking on water traveled widely.
Jesus is seen walking on water,
Recounted in towns along rivers and seas. Others, simpler or more private instructions, lived only in certain regions. A local group might memorize a saying, repeat it in prayers, or pass it from teacher to student, and it could vanish if no one ever wrote it down. Words carried by memory alone are fragile. They depend on people who remember them, who live long enough to teach them, and on communities that value them. If one link in that chain breaks, the words fade. This is where physical preservation becomes vital. Unlike spoken words, stone does not argue. Stone does not change with interpretation. Stone does not edit itself. Once something is carved, etched, or painted into a hard surface, it waits. It does not forget. It does not rely on memory or understanding. The message persists, often quietly, until someone uncovers it. The mosaic inscription in this discovery survived for precisely this reason. It was not intentionally hidden to defy record keepers or scholars. Instead, a building collapsed on top of it, sealing it beneath debris and earth. Fire never touched it. Armies never raised it. Looters passed it by, and time layered soil and mud over its surface. Silence, not belief, protected it. Centuries passed, and the message lay undisturbed, invisible to the world above. For historians, this offers a powerful lesson. Written history favors the powerful, the literate, the organized. Libraries, archives, and official copies survive because someone had the resources to maintain them. Spoken history, the earliest way humans preserved memory, is fragile by comparison. It relies on generations remembering, repeating, and valuing what was heard. If a community forgets, words can disappear entirely. The mosaic shows a rare exception when memory met material, when fragility met permanence. This discovery also demonstrates the interplay of chance and persistence. If the building above had not collapsed in just the right way, the floor might have been destroyed. If weather or erosion had taken its toll, the letters would be gone. Preservation is often accidental, but its effects are profound. Centuries of silence created a perfect time capsule, a window into a world where words could be both private and eternal. Finally, it reminds us that history is not only what is written, but what survives. Some words endure in stone, others in hearts and minds. Those that survive are rare and precious. This mosaic shows that even small, seemingly insignificant messages can outlast empires, endure earthquakes, and speak across millennia, waiting for someone to listen. History, in other words, does not always favor clarity or completion. It favors endurance, and sometimes silence becomes the ultimate protector. Does this change faith? For many, the very idea that missing words from Jesus' teachings might exist can feel unsettling. It raises questions. If there are words we have never read, does that mean what we know is incomplete? Could it shake the foundations of faith itself? These are natural reactions. Humans often seek certainty in sacred texts, assuming that the Bible contains everything necessary. Yet scholars who study early Christianity remind us to approach such discoveries with care. The words found in this mosaic do not contradict the teachings of Jesus as recorded in the canonical Gospels. They do not rewrite the essence of his message. Instead, they expand it, offering insight into how his instructions were understood, interpreted, and lived in the first century. Faith, in its earliest form, was never built solely on written text. Books, scrolls, and manuscripts came later. The first followers of Jesus did not carry Bibles with them as they moved from town to town. They carried voices, the voices of teachers, apostles, and fellow believers. Stories were repeated, sayings were memorized, and lessons were passed along in conversations, prayers, and communal gatherings. The written word would eventually preserve some of these teachings, but much of the life and energy of faith was oral. Communities remembered, lived, and applied these teachings in real-life contexts. This discovery illuminates that world. The inscription preserved in the mosaic provides a snapshot of belief before the Bible was fully assembled, before councils formalized scripture, and before church authorities determined which texts were canonical. It shows a faith in motion, dynamic, and personal. Followers were interpreting, practicing, and transmitting teachings in ways that made sense to them in their own communities. The words carved into stone suggest direct, practical guidance from Jesus that was part of daily life and devotion, not abstract doctrine. It is important to recognize that these findings do not take away from the Bible or the beliefs it preserves. Nothing in this inscription diminishes the authority, the stories, or the wisdom of Scripture. On the contrary, it adds layers of understanding. It allows modern believers to see the context in which early Christianity existed, a world of living memory, of personal relationships, and of practical guidance. The Bible became complete only after centuries of oral tradition and communal practice. Discoveries like this remind us that faith is rooted not only in texts, but in people and their lived experiences. Understanding this early context can make faith deeper rather than weaker. It highlights the humanity of the first followers, their devotion, their challenges, and the ways they preserved memory without the guarantee of written permanence. It also reminds us that belief was active, practiced, and evolving even before it was organized into formal systems of theology or codified into Scripture. Jesus' teachings were experienced and transmitted in real life, through actions and decisions, through care for others and communal rituals. The mosaic is evidence of this lived faith, a tangible connection to the people who carried these lessons centuries before the first Bible was compiled. Moreover, the discovery encourages reflection on the nature of divine communication. Faith is not limited to what is written in a single volume. Messages can exist in memory, in spoken word, in symbols, and even in the silent preservation of stone. This mosaic demonstrates that divine instruction can take forms beyond our conventional expectations. Jesus' message was dynamic, reaching his followers in ways that were meaningful in their daily lives. Recognizing this does not weaken faith, it enriches it, revealing a fuller spectrum of spiritual guidance. In essence, the missing words serve as a bridge between the past and the present. They remind modern believers that faith was alive and vibrant before it was ever organized into official texts. It was flexible, personal, and adaptable. The discovery allows us to appreciate the faith of the earliest followers who preserved teachings with care, devotion, and creativity, often without formal recognition or validation. Ultimately, encountering these lost words can inspire a renewed sense of connection and wonder. They show that the foundations of belief were already deeply rooted, long before formalized scripture existed. Far from threatening faith, these words illuminate the richness of early Christianity, reminding us that belief has always been about more than books. It has always been about living, experiencing, and remembering the message in the world around us. Faith, then, is not diminished by discovery. It is strengthened. It is human, historical, and alive. It is the voices of generations speaking across time, preserved by stone, memory, and devotion, waiting for us to listen and understand. Questions that will not go away. Archaeology has a unique power, but it also has clear limits. It can uncover hidden structures, reveal long-lost artifacts, and illuminate patterns that were invisible for centuries. Yet it cannot answer every question. Unlike a textbook, which claims to explain everything in neat chapters, archaeology raises questions as often as it solves them. It opens doors and then steps back, leaving us to wonder, reflect, and sometimes struggle with the implications. The mosaic inscription in this discovery is a perfect example. It gives us a glimpse of words that survived centuries underground, but it also reminds us how much might still be unknown. If one set of Jesus' words could survive outside the canonical scriptures, is it possible that many more did as well? How many teachings, instructions, or stories were passed along in whispers from teacher to student, in prayers spoken quietly in homes, or in advice shared within local communities never written, never formalized, never collected? These words could have shaped the daily lives of early believers just as powerfully as the ones that were recorded. Perhaps entire conversations, guiding choices, or moral lessons were remembered in villages and households but never inscribed on scrolls or tablets. The thought is staggering. History may have preserved only a fraction of what actually existed. Beyond the missing words themselves, the discovery challenges us to rethink what faith and tradition really mean. How much of early Christianity existed purely in action, in experience, and in communal memory, rather than in formal texts? The earliest followers lived by their belief. They acted, remembered, and interpreted in real time. Their devotion did not require a written record to have power, meaning, or effect. The mosaic shows us that words carved into stone, even if unseen for centuries, are just one fragment of a much larger living practice. These questions do not demand fear, panic, or doubt. They are not threats to belief or understanding. Instead, they invite curiosity. They ask us to explore history not as a rigid, finished story, but as a conversation across generations. Every artifact, every inscription, every preserved ruin speaks not just of what was, but of what might have been a dialogue between past and present that continues whenever someone uncovers a secret, a relic, or a hidden word. History, in this sense, is never fully closed. Even silence has meaning. When texts fall silent, the earth sometimes speaks instead. Layers of soil, collapsed buildings, and hidden mosaics can preserve fragments of memory that official records never did. These fragments offer insight into a world that existed before scripture was complete, before councils decided which books would be canonized, and before formalized teaching could dominate the narrative. Archaeology reminds us that knowledge is layered, just as the earth itself is layered, and that uncovering one secret often leads to many more questions. This discovery also raises deeper philosophical questions. What does it mean for memory and human experience to survive? How do ordinary people, without power or fame, influence the course of history simply by remembering and acting on words that might otherwise be lost? Could everyday actions and spoken teachings have shaped communities and belief systems as profoundly as written texts? And what else, lying beneath centuries of earth, waits for someone to find it? Words, instructions, or perhaps entire frameworks of understanding that have been quietly preserved? In the end, these questions will not go away. They persist because the past is not static. It is alive in fragments, in layers, and in traces that remain in the soil, the stones, and the memory of human communities. Each discovery, like the mosaic, reminds us that history is not simply a record to be read. It is a conversation to be engaged with, a dialogue that stretches across time, waiting for those who are willing to listen, investigate, and imagine the stories that have yet to emerge. What archaeologists uncovered is small in size but heavy in meaning. A few words, carved into stone, survived when voices faded and buildings fell. They remind us that history is not just written by authors, but shaped by accidents, loss, and survival. The story of Jesus did not begin as a book. It began as spoken truth, carried by people who never imagined future debates or headlines. Some of those words traveled far. Others stayed close to home, waiting. This discovery does not close the story. It opens it wider. It challenges us to listen more carefully, to accept that faith and history are layered, not simple. If this hidden message could wait 1,500 years to be heard, what else might still be beneath our feet? If you found this exploration meaningful, share your thoughts in the comments. Do these discoveries strengthen your curiosity or raise new questions for you? Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep dive into history's forgotten corners. We uncover new truths every week, and the ground still has many stories left to tell.